And now we come to the final entry. The top 20 monsters in Monster Hunter according to the community of CR-Volcanic. Let's see how you did. Beginning with number 20, Bloodbath Diablos. 5 stars, easily the best Diablos variant and definitely one of the best monsters, period. An utterly fantastic design with great lore, awesome looking moveset, incredibly intimidating music, and a perfect fight. He is the peak of old world in my opinion, and will always be one of my favorites. That moment when he reaches phase 2 and the music cuts out for a second just to explode when he unleashes a terrifying roar is peak Monster Hunter. 5 stars, pure nightmare fuel when you fight him for the first time, and the second, and the third, and EX, you get the point. Apparently, the secondary flagship to Vrax, and I can see why. He gets stronger by the minute, and is the only deviant to have its own theme. Phase 2 is a remix of the Old Desert from 2nd Gen as well. It was an honor to fight him. The hardest challenge I've ever had was bringing down EX Bloodbath solo. Took me months, but I pulled it off. And then there's Apex Diablos, who I don't even consider its own monster. What a load of bull. Before I even knew I would be able to play GU, when I was first learning about Monster Hunter, I remember watching Gaijin Hunter talk about this monster, and the roar stun into charge, and all that crazy bull. Fast forward maybe 2 years later, and my buddies and I are sat down ready to fight Bloodbath EX. Apparently, in the earlier hunts, Bloodbath enters the steam phase at very low health, but during the EX, it does so at around half. So there we are, thinking we almost have it beat, when we've barely made a dent. About 8 grueling attempts later, and we finally beat the thing. Peak Monster Hunter right there, man. I love when a boss is renowned for its difficulty, and you manage to take it down and see how far you've come as a player. That's the kind of aura this and a few other monsters exude, and that's probably my favorite part about it. Bloodbath is easily one of the best fights in the franchise, with an incredible design and backstory too, along with being a nice thank you to Diablos, who has been a backbone in returning monsters since the first game. His gear is very well designed, and speaking of design, his soundscape is also phenomenal. The lower pitch wails, the drilling through the earth, and of course the hellish howl that leads into his final phase. A perfect monster. I have no complaints. Please return. The purest form of nightmare fuel in Monster Hunter. Hell, even in gaming. Because if you know who this is, then you know why he's fantastic. 5 out of 5, no questions asked. The king of the deviants. Bloodbath Diablos comes rocketing in and just decimates anything in front of it. Such a cool and interesting class of monster, and Bloodbath stands at the peak of them. Every facet of this beast is designed for one purpose: to kill hunters. And he had the aura and prowess to back it up. Love him so much. Big music nerd, and this theme might be tied with Vrax for the best in the game. Number 19, Nurgigante. Some fans truly overhype the guy, but he really is a great monster and fight. He forces the player to match his aggression and rewards you from doing so with the white spike breaks into knockdowns. Gotta be a 5 stars, a strong flagship design overall, and a very memorable poster boy. Nurgigante is my favorite flagship, while being, in my opinion, the best Elder Dragon in base world, and I have history with him where he was my wall for so long until I got good and finally killed him. He earned my respect, and he was the first monster I farmed out its whole armor set for, which I would then use to finish off the rest of base world's story. Lastly, his Arch-Tempered theme is amazing, and he does spam his new move, which can be a little annoying. Overall, a monster I have always really liked, and I would love to see him again in wilds, ready to provide me and many others an amazing challenge once again. I'm always gonna be a sucker for the raw strength, brute force, non-elemental ailment bruiser archetype, and Nurgigante is certainly no exception. He's a very rugged, primal, and savage monster, and I like how this contrasts against the very sleek, pristine, and righteous Velkhana. His fight is fast-paced and frenetic, and I like how he grows stronger as he loses health, essentially having two phases, and that death cry he makes before entering his critical phase is just so metal. I'm a big fan of this barbarian Viking theming, and how it translates over to his armor and his weapons. Love this big ol' hedgehog, easy 5 stars. Absolutely 5 stars. Nurgigante was my biggest wall, and the first time I fought him, he whooped my ass. The first time I fought Rajang, it was easy, but Nurgigante was a metaphor in the place of Rajang, so I'm grateful for Nurgigante for teaching me how to play the game correctly, with how difficult I found him to be, but also how fun his fight and his gimmick was. He also taught me to do more grinding if I needed to pass certain walls. Nurgigante is 5 stars, and his theme is a masterpiece, let's be real. A fantastic monster and probably my favorite flagship from Generation 5. He is one of the most well-rounded, enjoyable fights in the game, with good tells for his moves and an interesting mechanic involving the hardening of his spikes, which actually takes advantage of the immense graphical leap seen in World. His gear looks amazing, it's useful, and his theme sounds great. His ecology and place in the world are intriguing as well. He's a fantastic addition to the series. His fanboys need to simmer down a little bit though. He's not the Goku of Monster Hunter, and there are definitely other monsters that are stronger than him. Nurgigante is what I think is the best monster in the series. He's the one fight you could easily lift from the game, drop it into another action game unchanged, and it would still be one of the best battles in it. Genuinely, when I first encountered it, I was just kind of in awe of how perfect the design was. The mark for what a good boss is, to me, is if you're still having fun fighting it while you're losing. And Nurgigante fit that role 100%. The spike gimmick is so perfect it hurts, and it's so satisfying to snap those spines off. The visual design is also stellar, using white to accentuate the grays and blacks, and the orange and purple underbelly really pops, tying the whole look together. And the monster manages to have a distinctly aggressive personality despite half the cast being ostensibly angry animals. I think it works for Nurgigante because instead of being just angry, you can tell he loves this. Like fighting is its favorite thing to do in life. 5 out of 5, the gold standard everything should be trying to reach in Monster Hunter. Number 18, Delam Mador. My favorite thing about Delam Mador's design is how it's able to look so much like a dragon, despite its most obvious visage being giant snake. Like they nailed the placement of its spikes to give off that otherworldly or megafauna look. And its fight is honestly really good for what they were working with, featuring several ways to attack and be attacked by it, a changing arena, and the awesomeness of getting to climb onto its back to attack the head weak point. It shows off MH4's verticality brilliantly now that I think about it, and this thing always looks so good in fan art. Delam Mador isn't just a spectacle fight, but the spectacle fight. Atala may have had more involved mechanics, but Delam Mador, the snake dragon, is so ridiculously big, it literally crushes mountain ranges. It's just so damn cool. I know that the fight is repetitive, but I have been on all those repetitions. It's great to fight, and great fun when you bring heat guard to counter the radiation and the hot floor. A great fun to climb up them. It's a ton of fun to smack the head from different funny new angles and positions, seeing when and where you can get away with what. It's fun that it gives you the topple of a mount if you do a mounting attack, as though they're saying, yeah, not really a way to mount it, but we'll give it to ya. I love the design, and I love the ever so rare tongue paralysis. I love breaking its parts, I love mining its meteors, the visual effects, and Superman diving the beam. I love the music. I don't think it's a banger, but it does sound like it fits a really kingly snake idea well. A monster I have hunted this much can't be less than a 5. He needs to come back and remind his subjects once and forever why he is called the King. In a series with some honestly terrible colossal monsters, Delam Mador stands out as one of the very few, I'm talking at most like 5, colossal monsters that don't suck. He has a really cool design, is one of the few snakes in the game, I like Naja a little more though, is fought in a super cool arena with plenty of verticality, is scalable throughout the fight, and it has you attack multiple different body parts simultaneously. The only bad things about him that make it that he doesn't get a perfect score is that he has an over-reliance on randomly spawning meteors, and if you fall down to the very bottom of the arena, you're landing in a giant pool of, I think, venom, where you will take passive damage, and the way back up is so long and slow that you might as well just get hit by the meteors. Otherwise, he is a great monster, and definitely a fitting final boss for 4U's high rank. His fight isn't anything crazy, especially by today's standards after considering what we just got in 5th gen, but on a 3DS, this was imposing as He's fun to climb, he does his fire breath, and he just looks damn cool. And that gear, man, is amazing. Just a little bit dated, he just stands still a lot. Could easily improve, but who knows when or even if that'll happen. Number 17. This next guest that we have is a maker of Monster Hunter ecological documentaries. This is Oceans talking about Astalos.
Hi everyone, I'm Oceans, and I've been invited here to talk to you about Astalos and read off some of your lovely comments about my favorite monster. He's always been my fave of the Fated Four, and then Rise went and gave him those frickin' gorgeous rainbow wings. I didn't think I could love this monster even more than I already did, but that securely cemented him among my favorites of all time. Bro is so cool and gorgeous at the same time, and his theme literally rocks. A really fun and challenging fight too. Amazing monster all around. Oh my god, I'm obsessed with this monster. The lightning horn, the theme, the fight, the colors, everything about him is the reason why I play Monster Hunter. Cool ecology, intense fun fight, and incredible music with stunning visuals. I'll be very surprised if Wilds has anything that can top my number 1, but I guess I just have to wait and see. I always got the sense that this guy had something to prove, going 150% for any threat, even putting up a fight against the King of the Skies. Using its lightning with its aggression to help overwhelm opponents, it's pretty impressive how distinct so many of these flying wyverns wind up feeling. The monster energy bug gets a 5 out of 5. Astalos is the heavy metal monster. Electric guitars, electric attacks, it's all so stupidly over the top that it circles back around to being awesome. It is kinda weird how much billing he had during Sunbreak, being placed on a similar pedestal that Mizutsune sat upon during Rise, mainly being the main attraction in the respective demos. Still, the Electric Wyvern will always be cool, and I hope he makes another appearance soon. The second I got punched halfway across the area, I fell in love with him. I don't think I have to say anything other than Dragonfly, Lightsaber Horn, Electric Guitar Wyvern. Like, seriously, one of the coolest flying wyvern in the series. I jumped for joy when he came back in Sunbreak, hunted him for hours, because he was such a fun fight. So yeah, can very much agree with everything the comments are saying. I think Astalos is one of those designs that, when you first see him, he looks a little over-designed, like he has all of these moving bits and glowing pieces, but it all just comes together during the fight. Piezoelectricity is such a phenomenal concept to center a monster around, with him having to charge up his body parts to then get ready to use them. It makes for such a fun flow to fight, and I think one of my favorite things is just the theme song itself. I prefer the Monster Hunter GU version over the Sunbreak version, but the Sunbreak version is also really good. I like how intense it is and how much it feels like you're dancing almost to the beat while you're dodging his heavy charges and punches. And I just like that we have a lightning monster that is so physical as well. Like, he doesn't use beams or electric balls all that much, although he does more so in Sunbreak. It's more about just punching you with sheer force of its electricity. It's extremely cool. Not to mention that green and black is just one of the coolest color schemes imaginable, only really surpassed by black and blue, which is what his deviant is. Which, if I could nominate another good monster, Bolt Reaver Astalos, mwah, fantastic critter. Love him so much. Anyway, thanks Volcanic for having me on, and moving on.
Number 16. Raging Brachios. Wow, this really is one of those monsters that got its identity turned on its head, then sideways, then on its head again in 5th gen, and definitely for the better. There are some complaints to be had about it sometimes feeling a little scripted, but I would say that's a small price to pay for what we got. And that new last phase theme, it's my 5th favorite piece of Monster Hunter battle music, and I listen to it very frequently. I'd listen to it even more if I knew where to find it on Spotify, or if it's even on there, but alas, I do not. As is right now, it's my least listened to of my top 5, but that doesn't make it any less special to me. All in all, an amazing monster from presentation to theme, and it builds off of the regular version wonderfully. Truly, one of the greatest variants ever. Amazing fight music, and the final showdown with the locale being blocked off is icing on the cake. He has fantastic armor and weapon design as well. I know some people don't like it when there's no variation in what weapons people bring to a hunt, but I think his fight justifies how powerful his weapons are. I started the series with World, played Iceborne, then Rise and Sunbreak. Also played Stories, but that's not important right now. I really enjoyed my time with those games, and I love Brachios. The whole idea of him. And when I saw him, I was on board immediately. A boxing brute wyvern with explosive punches. It's amazing. So when I encountered Raging Brachios as the title update, needless to say, it was cemented as my favorite fight in the whole game. It feels like you gave Mike Tyson explosive fists. I'm never going to be able to give that monster the justice it deserves. Immaculate, if you ask me. Raging Brachios is the greatest glow-up of 5th gen. Pre-World, they were just an arena-exclusive perma-enraged Brachi. Not the worst, but certainly not very interesting. Could give him like a 3 stars. Then Iceborne decides to throw 5 metric tons of budget and love at this thing, turning it into one of the most cinematic fights in the franchise. The final phase is legendary for a good reason. 5 stars. If Iceborne didn't exist, I'd say he's alright. But Iceborne does exist, and in my honest opinion, Raging Brachios is easily the best fight in that game. Does everything amazingly and offers a good challenge while not really relying on anything other than himself and his attacks. This version of Raging Brachios is one of the best fights in the franchise, and I can't express how much I love it. Let's not pretend that the last phase transition isn't the coolest thing ever. My god, the way he looks during that phase is so damn cool. This guy just blows my mind, and I go back to fight him fairly often just for the fun of it. I kind of wish they did some sort of temper thing with him, where they can make his second phase happen earlier and make him more powerful while doing it. Also, the theme. I don't even need to elaborate. I'll always stand by the opinion that this is the best fight theme in Iceborne and World, and definitely competing for the best in the 5th generation. Even the series as a whole. If we want to talk about the lore and all that too, we most certainly can. This is just a dude who found atomic bomb slime and just went, alright, bet. Could have killed him, but it didn't, because he's just a legend. Like, that's just badass. It takes the saying whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger to an extreme, and I love that. His original iteration, again, was just alright though. So 4.9 stars, an all-around masterpiece of a monster through and through. Number 15, Glavenus. One of my favorite monsters in the entire series and my favorite of the Fated 4. His moveset is really fun to play against, his gear looks sick, and he has really useful sharpness skills on his armor. He has a good theme, neat ecology, and the single most satisfying part break in the entire series with his tail cut, which causes his tail to stick into the ground vertically like a knife. It's so cool to watch every time. He may well be one of the most strategic monsters brought to the game. The lava time bomb he spits at you while you run towards him, the attacks gaining a new pattern when enraged, the super tailspin having similar starting animation as his tail sharpening animation. He has everything to catch you off guard. The devs gave him enough weaknesses to be really enjoyable. His dangerousness is shown as soon as we encounter him, and the 2 Rathians he battered up can testify to that. The design is good, the fight is great, the music is awesome, the weapons and armors are sick. That's a 5 out of 5 for me. In a game where breaking body parts on a monster is a huge dopamine rush, getting a tail break on a Glavenus is the greatest high you can get. 5 out of 5. There just isn't anything to hate about Glavenus. You get impressed enough with the concept of a huge dinosaur with a goddamn sword for a tail, who uses its mouth to sharpen and superheat said blade. Then the mother whips out the Beyblade move. It is almost perfect. Easily my favorite non-Elder Dragon level monster. The insane design oozes so much style that I can't help but love it. It's a massive, spiky Carnotaurus with Optimus Prime colors and a greatsword attached to its tail, which it sharpens and heats to a 1,000-degree blade with its mouth. It's insane and I love it. No matter what weapon you use, the fight always feels like an engaging dance, where there are constant openings in his tail, his head, his legs, despite his size and his speed. The fact that his head, tail, and legs and body all alternate as weak points based on when he heats them up encourages part breaks and team cooperation, especially with the KO you can get when hitting his heated head enough, and only being able to sever the tail when that's all heated up. He uses the fire element in satisfying ways, and his super move is such a good move to keep you on your toes while also being punishable if you know the timing and stay aggressive. I don't even care that his ecology and design is a little overkill for an apex predator. Glavenus is just peak Monster Hunter design and combat. Number 14, Namiel, 10,000 out of 5. I love this thing. Namiel is tied for my favorite monster of all time with Lunagaron. Its design is absolutely gorgeous. The glowing scales, the tentacle wings, the glowing whiskers, the massive wingspan that stretches the entire creature. It's just perfection. The fight is very unique. As I was playing through 4U and GU, I always wanted a monster that used two elements in tandem and doesn't do it in a stupidly annoying way. Kind of looking at you, Espinos. Namiel uses water and thunder, but not just as elements. Namiel coats the entire area in water and then uses electricity to chain shock those water puddles and whoop your ass with them. It's a genius fight that incorporates real life physics. Also, because it's the best monster thing to come out of Gen 5, Namiel has a great turf war with Savage Deviljho, and while it does share this turf war with Velkhana and Valhazak, Namiel's design makes it unique. To see such a gorgeous and beautiful animal clash with such a gruff and scary one is awesome. What a goddamn gorgeous design for a monster. Honestly, this creature just looks absolutely stunning, especially when all juiced up with electricity. I love marine-inspired design so much. What a great fight, too. It handles the floor is lava gimmick way better than any other monster, as its slime doesn't passively harm you, but can be manipulated to trip you up or explode when it uses electrical attacks. I don't get why people complain about its hit zones. Just tire it out and boom, you got all your juicy hit zone values. More dual element monsters, please. 5 stars easily. An absolutely amazing Elder Dragon. Peak design, excellent mechanics for its fights. It's cool to have a monster that makes use of multiple elements, so you can't just completely shut it down because you brought the right elemental resistance. And its armor set is super unique. It wasn't the best, but it was fun to use. And the design. What an amazing design. Combining deep sea creatures with the classic Kushala skeleton, and you have an amazing monster. I hope it can return again because a design like this shouldn't stay stuck in just one game. Generally a very well-liked monster, and I do agree that he's awesome. Visually and conceptually, he's possibly one of the most intricate elders in the class, and I love it. In terms of his fight though, while he's fun on the element side, he does lack a little bit in terms of physical moves, some being straight up unimpressive on their own. I also feel his base form has limited mobility, despite AT Namiel displaying that he is perfectly capable of that kind of finesse. Used to be my favorite, but he's worn on me due to said issues. He'd be pretty goated if he got into wilds though. If Duna can create massive waves during the downpour, it'd be so fun to wonder what Namiel could do. Fantastic visuals, music, equipment, and an extremely unique and interesting fight that rewards you for knowing just how far you can go with your greed before needing to back away, and how the different phases change those timing windows. It also does the area denial style type of fight the best out of Brachy or Vol or Teostra in World Kashala. Its roar is also awesome and super iconic. It's easily one of the best monsters, with its only real weakness being that its tail is kinda awkward to try and cut. Why can we cut Namiel's tail and not Legiana's, by the way? And its hit zones being kinda weird, but thankfully not to the point where it becomes annoying. One of the easiest 5-star ratings for me to give out. Another phenomenal aspect of the monster is that it is set up perfectly for future games. It is super easy to imagine a status-based Namiel that leans even further into the jellyfish theming, with something like poison paralysis or poison sleep or paralysis sleep could all be these debilitating buffs unless you bring the right types of skills, which I think Monster Hunter needs to lean further into. Plus, giving it sleep and paralysis could allow you to call it Demon Namiel for a subtly funny meme inclusion. Namiel would fit into wilds in the Scarlet Forest as well. There is already water on the floor for it to take advantage of. I personally don't care whether or not we see underwater combat return, but if it does, then Namiel would be one of the coolest inclusions. Not only is the monster already incredible, but it also has so much potential to get even cooler in the future, which is a really hard balance to strike, but the Iceborne team absolutely nailed it. It's just peak. Number 13. Abyssal Legris. Abyssal Legris is what comes to mind for me whenever someone talks about how the deepest parts of the ocean are unexplored. Abyssal really captures the essence of a monster only few got a glimpse of, and even fewer live to tell the tale. On top of that, it just looks absolutely cool. The color scheme is a vibe. This guy was worth grinding all the way to HR 100. Even when I was in the non-event quest, I doubted that I could solo him. His colors were amazing to see in-game, and I loved the variation on Legris' underwater fight. Plus, you fight him in Sadeas' arena, albeit without his amazing music, which I could see working for Abyssal. A rare species of a monster I've originally first fought in GU, that is exclusive to 3U as of writing, using a fight mechanic exclusive to 3U, and in an arena exclusive to 3U. I couldn't have asked for a better final monster on my journey to fight every exclusive monster and subspecies in 3 Ultimate. Massive 5 out of 5. Abyssal Legris is nothing short of imposing, from its massive size, to the fact that we fight it in its home turf where it has the complete and utter advantage, to seeing it making whirlpools as if it was nothing, and using such potent lightning at any moment. Abyssal Legris is truly the Lord of the Deep Seas. 5 out of 5. First off, its visuals are absolute peak. He's the best looking monster in the best looking Monster Hunter game. Second, I just beat him for the first time today, and holy moly, what an amazing fight. It's quite like Goldbeard Sadeas in the sense that it's designed to force your underwater movement prowess to the extreme. His attacks are all fair and very possible to escape from. His new tornado move comes out fast, but not excessively so. It's very big, but not so much that you can't get away from it in time. That is, if you're skilled enough to know which direction in that fully 3D space you need to take for your dodge. This applies to every single move he has, even his charged AoE, which visually affects an area the size of 2 Goldbeard Sadeases. It can feel inescapable. And speaking again of visuals, this is by far his sickest looking move. The dark blue lightning bursts everywhere around him in the form of big sparkling spots that spawn with increasing intensity, each one having its own hitbox. The radius of effect gets denser as these spots become more numerous until they disperse and vanish. The effort of getting to HR 70 really pays off with this monster, and I believe he's the best underwater fight. Slightly better than Goldbeard. Abyssal is cool, but his fight's pretty mid. Aside from the whirlpools, it's just Legris underwater again. However, he is the only rare species that gets unique weapon designs. Number 12. GogMazos. 5 stars. Praise the Lord. Lord Gog was a treat as a final boss. Magala's general body shape covered in tar, constantly dripping off, and a Dragonator lodged in its backside. We'll get back to that later. Lord Above only appears when he's hungry. He took a cue from Teostra, and also has an affinity for gunpowder, which, you guessed it, can only be found in our villages. And in Dundorma, he hit the jackpot. While he may not have the mysterious factor like an Akarkos or an Atala, he is extremely menacing. The first phase and soundtrack have this eerie and horror-like tone. After dealing enough damage, he enters his second phase, and he can fly. Fun fact, he is the largest monster in the franchise capable of flight. He just starts raining down dripping tar, and his heat beam covers huge areas of the ground. Have I mentioned the damage he deals? The second theme really cements, oh, he's mad. Now to the Dragonator. You can not only break it off of him, but you can use it against him. How awesome is that? And then of course you have all of the other heavy weaponry found in the Battle Fortress. He's one of the first siege boss monsters who can actually put the hurt on you, so he's definitely no pushover. I said Lao gave Godzilla vibes. Yeah, I think GogMazos takes the cake on that. He's just so awesome, and out of all the siege monsters, I want him to return the most. Not to mention his equipment. Genuinely, one of the best final bosses in the series ever. Iceborne Fatalis is the only one to give him competition from me. He's also my 5th favorite monster of the entire franchise. His design is just so cool. The giant, ghoulish tar dragon that rises out of the marshes to break into a city and eat its gunpowder. That's metal as hell. His lore and ecology is such a simple yet effective motive as to why we need to stop him. His fight is awesome, having to use all of the best siege weapons and being as big as you can get while still feeling like a fight, and his tar beam is legendary. When he gets to phase 2 and he takes flight, that is just awe-inspiring. I also love the little face that he's got under his chin, which gives him this kind of funny element to him as well that doesn't take away from him, and having a Dragonator stuck in his back from his last raid that you can then break off and use is such an awesome touch from a lore and a fight mechanic standpoint. He also has a decent theme and some cool gear as well. I can't sing this guy's praises enough. 6 stars. If you could, maybe even 7. Genuinely one of the best ever creations and the final boss of my favorite game ever. GogMazos is what America wants to be. All hail our Lord and Savior, Gog. The moment and the image of this big boy flying and spamming hot beams of oil all around will be forever etched in my memory. Awesome. Just awesome. Big and ugly and terrifying. Then it starts flying and beams the whole arena. Nice music too. 5 out of 5. Number 11. We return back to Rurikon to bring you Abyssal Legris.
Shields up, everyone. Rurikon here, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite monster and his variant, that obviously being Bogle Goose and Seething Bogle Goose. So I have a couple of comments here to read out. We have the first one from Kitchen Gun 1175. Him, the best invader, the best music, the best hunt. By the way, these are all factually correct. Egghead. Okay, why you gotta call him an egghead? Come on, man. I like to call him Pinecone. That works too, but you know. Egghead is probably in 99% of Hunter's top 10 lists. Everything about his hunt is almost perfect. On top of being visually striking and looking like a bomber plane, he's got one of my favorite battle themes in the series, and his moveset is extremely well designed and fun to hunt. You neglected to say that he also has excellent hit zone, so when you hit him in that sweet head or his tail, it hurts a lot, so that's really cool. Where Joe is extreme power and Jang is extreme speed, the Goose strikes a balance between the two and works in its favor. 5 out of 5. Loved and Rise added him without announcement at all. I hope they do that more. Agreed. It's an absolute beast. And by the way, the comment where he looks like a bomber plane, he was actually scored the 52nd most popular monster, as in the B-52, which I thought was cool too. Anyway, we have another comment here from Cleestoon, and he says, Bogle Goose is peak invader design. Absolutely. It's showing up to ruin your early high-rank hunts with its explosive skin tags, pine cones, and its theme, which sounds a lot like a World War II documentary soundtrack, is the icing on the cake. And then he showed up for the Rise completely unannounced. Absolutely awesome stuff. Next comment here from Spike 2276. I don't think any monster will ever leave a first impression on players quite like Basil. There's nothing like hunting your first high-rank Puke or the like, only for a B52, get that right, bomber to crash into the battlefield with a literal boom. I wish his Rise version still kept the aggressive player tracking invader AI, and that the pattern of his scales dropping to the ground was random, but even with those gripes in Rise, his fight and presence is so good that it's not enough to bump him down from this very well-deserved 5 out of 5. You'll love to see it. Now we have another one from Sacred944. My favorite invader monster and favorite monster from base world. It's hilarious how he just comes in and bombs everything. His fight is good fun and a great test of spatial awareness. And the theme is iconic at this point. It's so good, dude. I love it. Mavhawk says, the undisputed number 1 invader! And I absolutely agree. The Basil Goose is my favorite monster. Obviously, I prefer his variant even more, but mostly it is because I'm a Gunlance main, so therefore I just absolutely love explosions. So when he comes in, blowing everything up, I just absolutely love it. That's like one of my favorite things about him, how much he explodes.
Number 10, Espinos. Espinos is truly something special. Putting aside the gambit in the room for now and just analyzing the fight, they're already amazing. Them starting the fight asleep just gives them so much personality. Like, yeah, I'm so confident in my defenses that I'm just gonna nap out in the open. It's a shame they don't do the whole ignoring you upon first waking up thing, but given Sunbreak's flow of combat, it was probably for the best. The actual fight is also really good by itself. You would think that a monster capable of inflicting triple status with just one attack would be really annoying, especially when one of them is paralysis. But honestly, Espinos just kinda makes it work. It truly helps to make their fireballs feel like a proper threat, being stuck in place while 2 ailments knock down your health. Sometimes it pays for a monster to be somewhat unforgiving. The rest of their moveset consists of incredibly fast physical attacks, pretty much never giving you a moment to rest. It creates such sharp contrast to how they start the fight off and gives him a very unique demeanor. You will pay for disturbing him. Most of their physical attacks are also capable of poisoning you, which just adds to the threatening aura they possess. Plus, you can remove the poison from these attacks by breaking his parts. Additionally, the fact that they are shown to hunt poison toads in this game when idle, which is where their poison comes from, makes them feel more real. And that's without getting into what Espinos means for the series going forward. They were the first frontier monster added to the mainline game in 14 years. And even then, Leviathan and Hypnoc were partially made by the mainline team. Espinos was added to Sunbreak as a nod to Frontier, and hopefully the positive reception they received means we may get some more in the future, as it would be truly a shame if all the cool ideas that Frontier had would just go to waste, even if some are a tad much for mainline. Yes, Espinos is truly incredible. 5 out of 5, who would win? A metallic dragon capable of manipulating the very storms, or one sleepy boy? As someone who had the honor of experiencing Frontier, joined mid-2013, you can likely imagine how hyped I was to see the representation of it in mainline, especially after its tragic shutdown in 2019. They said many times that they would not add Frontier monsters, but they did. They actually did, and not just any Frontier monster, the Frontier monster. The design, the fights, not as crazy as other Frontier monsters, but it still has its unique flair. Triple status fireballs, the interaction with him eating poison toads or hornetars is fascinating, but also very brutal. The first ever monster to actively interact with the endemic life we collect might be how it gets its toxic and paralytic properties. Of course, we also can't ignore the design inspiration of a rose, beautiful but deadly. The theme is erratic and hectic, which is a pretty good translation of the fights. Finally, the turf war with Kashala confirms just why it is so sluggish, and without a care in the world. He is powerful, and he knows it, so he can just sleep out in the open. Other monsters trying to hunt him down would get hurt more than what he's worth. The way he moves during the sleep is also really cute. One of the few high-tier monsters with a lot of personality, mostly found in low-tier monsters. He's even got kind of a dad bod. 5 stars. Oh, hell yeah, he's back. Living proof that there is no such thing as a bad idea. How the did they make this fight fun. The OG Frontier monster, the guy who started the whole thing, the only one who could have rivaled Gore as the most hyped monster in Sunbreak. Espinos is such a deceptively interesting monster under the surface. Most monsters of his stature are characterized as either merciless, wanting to eat, or both. But Espinos is instead this indomitable tank that just sleeps all day. Even when you start hitting him, he doesn't really give a shit. At least until you flinch him. Then he goes raging bull mode. Such a fun personality to give a higher tier. His fight is exhilarating too. He kind of fights like a Diablos, but not. He kind of fights like a Rathian, but not. Espinos is this grab bag of charges and fireballs and stomps that makes him feel old school, but yet interactive. Plus, the statuses. The poison burn paralysis combo is really fun to see play out as you struggle on the floor and wither away. I hope we get more mixed attacks like that. 5 out of 5. Espinos was the single best thing to ever happen in Sunbreak, along with his flaming subspecies. He is my #1 monster in that game by far. So glad my boy made a return. Number 9, Chaotic Magala. An elder dragon trapped in a shell that it can never break free of, forever living on in everlasting torment as life's horrible, unclassified mistake. Chaotic Magala poses a great challenge, but the general concept of this monster is so marvelously well done, especially the music. I love how contorted and frantic it sounds, as if it itself is in pain. The Shigaru leitmotif segment dying out is an excellent touch. 5 stars for the wandering malformation, no doubt. Top 10 monster, my favorite variant, favorite Magala, and that Sunbreak cutscene is my favorite Monster Hunter cutscene ever. For real, those opening lines, why have I fallen, why have I failed, go insanely hard. The lore, ecology, that's all simple but very interesting while adding some tragic feeling. The design is subtle but amazing. The lone horn, the glowing red eye with the golden scales on the sides are top notch. It was good in MH4U, but Sunbreak did an amazing job at portraying the pain and sheer madness that this monster is enduring. And gameplay wise, it's incredibly fun to fight. Going ape, that grab into laser into wirebug dodge move, and the claw swipes that launch frenzied waves. The supernova looks like it's discarding some accumulated surplus of frenzy mist on the hunter, and I love it. Could have been too edgy, but everything is so perfectly put together that I can't help but appreciate the beast. Chaotic is a conceptual masterpiece, a Magala that for whatever reason didn't manage to molt and is now perpetually stuck in between forms. This is a simple concept on the surface, but it shines through in so many things this creature does. For starters, the moves often start as a recognizable Gore moveset, just different. People that know the regular fight inside and out, therefore, are going to have a hard time with it. It's very interesting for a fight to punish prior knowledge and muscle memory. They also didn't have to give Chaotic its own theme. Variations changing up the regular music didn't become common until 5th generation, and yet they did. A mix of both Gore and Shigaru's themes was definitely the right choice from a thematic standpoint, and I would say it's pulled off pretty well. Also, I don't know if it's a common opinion, but I for one really enjoy the fight. Chaotic stands up to Gore in every regard except story, and although that's an important piece of the regular monster's identity, I don't love its variant any less for it. 5 stars again. Chaotic is a great concept for a monster variant, and it being stuck halfway between Gore and Shigaru, the pain driving it insane and vengeful is both impressive and disturbing. I really like what Sunbreak did with it. It's got a great variety of moves pulling from both Gore and Shigaru's repertoire, and amps them up to the point that the monster feels unhinged. This thing is suffering, and its only release is to make everything else feel its pain. Great monster. I used to really love Chaotic Magala in Sunbreak for his lore and how unique he stands out compared to variants. Instead of the variant being an all-powerful monster, you have a writhing, agonized monster to fight. Despite this, doing his fight again has made me realize he isn't exactly the best compared to Shigaru, though it is above Gore. Not an all-time favorite battle, but he gets a solid 4 from me. Number 8, Volstrax. As someone who likes the grounded aspect of Monster Hunter above everything else, Vrax is absolutely incredible. And it's a shame how some people are unable to notice how subtle its design is beyond the meow rocket dragon aspect of him. Monster Hunter's grounded aspect is part of the franchise's identity, yes, but it's fantastical enough to allow some crazy concepts like that. Vrax is the fastest monster in the game, so it's inspired by the fastest land animal alive, the peregrine falcon. It has shiny scales to handle the high atmosphere radiation, and sharp dorsal plates to allow it to feel more aerodynamic. It could have been completely nonsensical, but they did a great job to make it as believable as the other monsters. Also, since we don't really know how Dragon Element works biologically, using it instead of fire to power itself up is a pretty good idea from a design perspective. Peak fight, peak OST, peak design, peak concept, peak execution. Would love to see him in Wilds. 5 stars. Even if he's not my absolute favorite, he's absolutely the sickest monster they've ever done. Not much else comes even, remotely close. From the design itself, the spectacle of the fights, the victorious music to his memorable and beautiful roar, even as something as simple as the ambush, he is excellent. Nothing can top that. My favorite monster is Najarala, but if someone asks me what the best Monster Hunter monster is, I'd tell him Vrax. I hope he comes back again, even if it is just as Crimson Glow. 5 out of 5. What else is there to say about Vrax that hasn't been said already? He's got a sleek design. Those changing form wings are so interesting, and to top it off, he has one of the best themes. That around the world attack is among my favorite monster attacks because of how unique it is. We all know Vrax is the rocket-powered Elder Dragon, but I think he embodies the most amazing thing about monster designs in Monster Hunter. It's such an outlandish animal, and yet the way they designed it biologically is amazing. From the clear peregrine falcon inspiration, to the fact that its air ducts on its chest convert air into dragon energy, the same way gills convert water into air for fish. It's such a crazy idea, and yet it kind of works. The music, the monster design, the hunt itself will always be my number one. Finally going to the literal top of the world and seeing the monster I've been yearning to take down since the beginning. Truly a masterclass in itself. Vrax has one of the best designs and some of the best mechanics. I love it every single time. It's the perfect monster for a game where you have stuff like hunter arts and hunting styles. It has a certain move where it jumps over you and sends dragon energy all over the place while he repositions, and it's great to have moves that can be nice and tricky for even experienced hunters to deal with. Another gimmick that I like is that he's very weak to element damage, but he also catches you on the dragon blight, so it forces you to play better, and it's a different feeling compared to many other monsters. I also love some of his part breaks, or, when you hit his chest enough, it can burst and deal a ton of damage to get a knockdown against him. And his meteor dive is another great use of the hunter arts and wirebug counters. And it's very cool to see a monster with rocket features actually using it in different ways during combat. And lastly, Dragonheart is one of the most interesting armor skills. This is easily one of my favorite monsters. Number 7. I am happy to bring back Jacob to talk about another one of his favorites, the Legiacris.
Alright, this is Jacob doing the Legiacris entry. Legiacris. For me, Legiacris deserves the highest spot it can get. My nostalgia is strong for this monster as it single-handedly sold me on Monster Hunter, and I've been addicted to the series ever since. The community seems to share this immensely positive opinion on this monster. Zahir Shaikh 6879 says, well deserving of his title, the King of the Seas, to counter Rathalos as the Sky King, the legacy this Leviathan left behind shouldn't be snuffed at, considering the fact that he really cemented the series as environmental travel for hunters going forward with his underwater combat. His design is also peak, being the best depiction of a naturalistic sea dragon with traits of crocodiles, snakes, and a bit of an eel, along with the iconic blue and beige counter shading for the ocean, plus his striking red spikes that produces thunder element. Really hope he does make his grand return in future games. The world really needs him now more than ever. Andrew says, just like every other underwater monster, his underwater fight is way more fun than his on-land fight. He was not that great in Generations Ultimate because of this, but in his home turf, he's fantastic. Great design too. I wonder if they'll ever bring him back again. If they'll make the Deserted Island theme his music. It's practically his theme, just like how the Forest and Hills practically belongs to Rathalos. Stormer JC9493 says, literally a perfect monster from every aspect. Lore, ecology, fight, gear, theme, and the first one to legit have proper story involvement that we in the West experienced. It's an all-time great flagship. I legit don't have anything to nitpick. Eric Allen 920 says, my first experience, gameplay-wise, was in Generations Ultimate, and I thought he was alright to mid. But then I recently picked up a copy of 3 Ultimate, and my opinion of him skyrocketed after fighting him underwater. I just love the speed boost underwater and the lack of AoE lightning attacks on land as compared to the Generations Ultimate version. And finally, this commenter said, peak flagship design. Other than Rathalos, I can't think of a flagship that represents their generation better. Set the tone for underwater combat while still having a land fight. He's so damn cool that despite only being in a couple games and sitting out of 5th gen, despite the devs' efforts in the early alpha build of World, Legiacris still placed 3rd in the popularity polls. Can't wait for Legiacris to return, hopefully in Wilds with his full moveset. It's funny, Legiacris honestly lives rent-free in my head. I think I'm obsessed with this monster. Often when people ask me what my favorite dinosaur is, my first thought is to answer with Legiacris, even though he's not a dinosaur, and he's also not even a real animal. I personally really love Legiacris.
Number 6, Fatalis. Iceborne really pulled the OG Black Fatalis from the bottom of the Origin Dragons to be one of the fandom's most beloved endgame bosses. I still remember the old times where only the lore is what was around for Fatalis fans to have in defending their love of Fatty. The Iceborne fight is in contention for the best fight in the series in my opinion. The lore, story, and theme is S-tier plus. The reward of killing him is excellent. Also, I love that the director for Iceborne saw all the love the community was giving to him in the official promotion material involving Fatalis and decided to add him to the game. Crazy good design in every game it appears in. Fatalis is super intimidating. The game really hyped him up, he's shrouded in mystery, the fight is super atmospheric, and the games do a great job at portraying the true power of a black dragon. 5 out of 5 would fail to quest timer again. One of the coolest monsters ever. In a game that prides itself on its realistic ecology and anatomy, you have a European dragon that is actively malicious towards humans and has an impossible anatomy with crystal eyes and a near instant aging process. The perfect foil to everything Monster Hunter stands for, and I love it. For me, Fatalis is a culmination of a lot of what makes Monster Hunter so damn cool. He's a normal Western dragon in a world where Kushala Daora is the most generic of that kind of creature. He's a downright villain in a world where creatures are depicted as animals over just enemies. And he's a creature that has so much mythology and downright supernatural abilities and implied abilities that he stands out by being a true monster in a world of big animals. 5 out of 5, I cannot wait for the return of the Dragon God. He's him. He's the big boy. He's the champion, the big kahuna, the Dawn, the boss, the kneecap breaker, the unmountable, except for rage gaming that one time, the Shraid Smasher, the face melter. He is Fatalis. 5 stars, easy. Number 5, Malino. My personal favorite monster in the series. I love his story, his theme, his aesthetic, and his fight. There's not a single thing I dislike about him. Of course, I'm biased. I think everyone is to their favorite monster. But I think there is a reason why Malino has stuck in the minds of so many following Sunbreak's release. Mal has a lot to do with Sunbreak. I liked Rise too, but the rush development caused by COVID created an underwhelming game, and Magna Malo is controversial as a flagship. Malino, as a representative of Sunbreak, needed to pull in a lot of good faith for the game's reputation, and seeing as months later there are people who would still swear that the Rise experience is better than Worlds is a testament to how much good faith life Mal and Sunbreak brought in. One of my fondest memories in this series is doing the Sunbreak demo with friends, and just how much better it felt compared to base Rise. Aside from the game he represents, Malino is a phenomenal monster. Even without the extra story we got in the form of Primordial, Malino is a phenomenal flagship, having easily the tightest storyline in base Sunbreak since Gore in 4. His design and gothic inspiration is inspired, yet less on the nose than Magdamalo's. It feels like he's the combined effort of everything that went into base Rise. The Bloodblight pushes you to interact with Rise in the ways that it wants you to, and preps you for what is to come in the endgame with hyper-aggressive monsters and a fast playstyle. Personally, I love Malino, and he does everything a monster should in my opinion. Here's hoping he comes back in Wilds at some point. 5 out of 5, best boy. My favorite 5th gen newcomer and my 3rd favorite monster of all time. I fought him in the demo, and as soon as he started teleporting, I knew I was gonna love him. He shook up my top monsters and gave my top 2 a run for its money. His fight is just amazing, his design is awesome, and he's a major player behind the best Monster Hunter story other than MH4. Absolutely a peak monster. While his theming is a little on the nose and he's very ungrounded, his design is so damn fabulous that I can give him the pass for it. And he doesn't feel like an OC, kind of like Magdamalo can. Such a creepy yet classy dragon. Definitely one of the best this series has ever seen. His fight rocks too, and has quite a few tricks up its sleeve to keep you on your toes, to the point where I'd say he's one of the harder fights in the game. This is especially true once he enters the bloodening phase and starts teleporting about the place while also chaining combos left, right, and center. Furthermore, his weapons and armor designs are delicious, and his theme is easily top 10 in the entire series. The only negative thing I could say about him is that he gets completely eclipsed by his much superior variant. He gets a very enthusiastic 5 stars from me. A vampire dragon that teleports, and he's secretly a benevolent creature corrupted by the evil thing that he fought to protect the land from. Come on, that's just the description and he's already 5 stars. Plus the fight's amazing. Enough said. 5-star fight for the game he's in. Would love to see him or Primordial come back in a game that doesn't leave the monsters so wide open after each attack. I'll never forget how flabbergasted I was when he started teleporting after enraging and powering up. Number 4. As we're starting to wind things down, it is my pleasure to bring in Maki GS one more time, discussing 4th place, Atala.
Now we have Atala from Awesome Raptor 21. Such a departure from other endgame monsters in the best way. A bug the size of a normal monster suddenly puppeteering a mecha made from old guild ship parts in the 2nd phase, before swinging the metaphorical wheel of time as a weapon of, while Proof of a Hero plays in the final phase as absolute peak. The perfect swan song fight to end the classic era of Monster Hunter. 5 stars. I didn't expect to hunt a mantis as the final monster for the classic Monster Hunter, but I have to say, it did leave a lasting impression on me. From PR Illager, I love her. She is, in my opinion, the best final boss in the series. As for her design, it's fine, nothing crazy, but her design isn't what carries the monster. That honor is for her fight design, and her fight is just incredible. She has not 2 phases, not 3, and not 4 phases, but if I remember correctly, 5 phases, and each one of those phases are incredible in their own right, but when they're brought together, creates a final boss of final bosses. 5 out of 5. I was confused when I saw Atala for the first time. It didn't feel like a strong monster, but as soon as it started using its silk to lift up old metals, dragonators, and even a Frankenstein mech, it all made sense. From Ammo KM9CS, she's an ancient Egyptian-styled praying mantis that uses threads of silk to pilot a mech of whatever scraps there are lying around. Her fight is one of the more easy side, but the sheer spectacle of setting and premise easily lands her into 5 out of 5 and my all-time favorite monsters. From Andrew HZ5ZC, what a great monster. Although I will say that the mech phase is pretty much all show and no substance gameplay wise, but it's one of the most, if not the most awesome and unexpected spectacle in the series, so I can't bring myself to rate the overall monster as less than 5 stars. I honestly was hoping for Atala as the final boss of Sunbreak instead of Amatsu. I'm good with what we got, but I just think Atala had so much potential. Her usage of webs can mimic our usage of the wirebug, and imagine if the Rampage Arena was repurposed as the arena for this fight, with the mech being made of all the siege weaponry and fortifications. The mech could have been made even bigger and better, requiring wirebugs to traverse it and reach its weak points. I just think the devs missed a huge opportunity here. Plus, Ricebreak already takes a whole bunch of inspiration from GU. Oh well, I guess there's potential for her in Wilds. Actually, hold on a second. We've seen what look to be quite a few man-made structures in Wilds, like those giant lightning rods. If there's more stuff hiding beneath the ground of the Windward Plains, then maybe? Yeah, I was hoping to see Atala back in Sunbreak, especially how we were using Silkbind skills and wirebugs. It's quite unfortunate, but maybe the devs have bigger plans for her. From Menectrix, 5 stars, easily. She's an Egyptian-themed mantis who is extremely clever about how she uses her silk. She uses them like classic security lasers that you have to be very mindful of. Then, she uses a gridder as a weapon very effectively. Also love how if you don't know about her other forms, you think, this is it? The big scary monster the guild trusts me to hunt? Then you get a second phase where Atala pulls out a freaking mech, the ultimate form of look scary so predators don't eat me function. The mechanics of fighting the mech is easy to grasp after a while, but even after you've destroyed her magnum opus, a part of it comes with her to the finale. To touch on the music briefly, I love her Phase 1 and 3 theme. It's properly classic Egypt, sounding as it should. As grand as she is, the mech phase theme is alright, not as memorable as the other phases, left with only the wheel and countless Dragonators. Atala makes her final stand against one of my favorite versions of Proof of the Hero. The wheel isn't just a reskinned Gridder or Dragonator. I like how she has rolling attack with it. Then there's the attack Allmother copied the homework of it, the triple Dragonator spin. When you feel like getting to phase 5 was a lucky break, this attack is terrifying. Yet, through all of this, I soloed her for my first kill. It was one of the most satisfying things I've done, up there with soloing Iceborne Fatalis. Soloing Atala gave me the courage to solo Tyre Morales, Delam Mador, and GogMazos. Atala was a sweet finale for the classic series. I didn't expect to hunt a mantis as the final boss, but they exceeded my expectations. I don't have much else to say. I agreed with what everyone said here. From its design and hunt, it became one of my favorite monsters too.
And now, we enter and compare to the original top 3, our top 3, beginning with number 3, Shagaru Magala. The way they build up the fight itself is amazing. How it is portrayed as a rivalry between you and it throughout the game, and then the final confrontation is just so perfect. The way it flies up into the air, spreads its wings, and kind of smugly flaunts its glory is just too good. Also, one of my top 3 favorite soundtracks in the entire series. My second favorite monster in the series. For Ultimate's village story was really cool, and confronting this beast at the top of the world was such an epic climax. His music is fantastic. The star pose he makes while enraged is iconic, and the blacked out sky giving way to blue when he is defeated is awesome. His fight is really fun too, being a satisfying difficulty increase over Gore. In Sunbreak, he's even more satisfying to fight, with the new moves that he has. Top tier monster. I hope the entire Magala line comes back in Wilds again, especially alongside Nurgigante, so we can see them finally have a turf war. Facing down your longtime rival, just you and him, both at the peak of your strength. One will rise, one will fall. The design, music, lore, and especially the fight are more than deserving of 5 stars. Seriously, the Magala line is just incredible. Shigaru is phenomenal. We go from the dark, brooding black carapace of Gore to this glorious golden dragon with Shigaru. It is menacing yet regal, and while you can still see plenty of Gore in its fight, it also feels like it has evolved. Shigaru picks up a bunch of new moves and utilizes its wing arms better and more frequently, while powering up its frenzy abilities as well. It is a vicious, brutal fight, but also beautiful. Few things in the series have the same majesty as Shigaru rising into the air, darkening the sky, unfurling its wings into that gorgeous star pattern, and unleashing a barrage of purple frenzy explosions all over the ground. It is so much fun to fight this monster. 5 stars without question. Shigaru is a gleaming god who perfectly juxtaposes juvenile Gore Magala. In terms of a battle, he really highlights the options a hunter has between moving around and back or left and right, and then of course the Risen variant is absolutely brutal for space coverage. Ecologically, the wing arms are a beautiful spin on Elder Dragon's 6-limb rule too. His golden scheme is an excellent contrast for the frenzy's darker hues. My second favorite monster of all time. The story, the ecology, the fight, especially in Sunbreak, is all perfect. The gold is brilliant, especially contrasting with the purple and black of the Frenzy Virus. One of the absolute greatest of all times, 5 out of 5, no notes, age was kind to Gore Magala. The final form of my second favorite monster. I would give him 6 stars if I could. His design is awesome, being the opposite of Gore's, the Dragon of Darkness and Light, and the Death Star pose he does is just excellent. His fight is great, and his theme hits incredibly hard, especially in the final fight of the story of 4U. His role in the story, just like Gore, is the best Monster Hunter has ever done. His weapons are cool, he just knocks every aspect you'd want out of a monster out of the park. Number 2, Gore Magala. It's as if a supervillain was a dragon, and it has such a cool way of weaving itself into the story of Monster Hunter 4. Legitimately one of the coolest dragons in the entire series. I cannot express how great Gore is. Beautiful black armor, impeccable dragon visuals, the effect of the Frenzy Virus basically creating the next flagship monster, crafting an alpha predator that can overcome the virus and spread it across an entire mountainside, making it almost omniscient in any place that it is saturated with the frenzy. I think the only flaw of Gore is that the other games it appears in, like Rise and Frontier, do not give it the respect and sense of threat that it deserves. Without even mentioning the story of Monster Hunter 4, his mechanics surrounding the Frenzy Virus, and the dramatic changes made to his fight during his Rage mode, are all enough to put him among my top 20 easily. His design is a little edgy equals cool, but honestly it works for him. His ecology is a little strange, but honestly, the idea of an Elder Dragon caterpillar is so cool that the absurd parts of his ecology don't really bother me. Everyone loves Gore Magala. 5 out of 5. 5 stars, no question. Gore Magala is such a fascinating creature. It looks mysterious and threatening in its base form and has a nice variety of attacks. Then it gets angry and things go crazy. This monster puts out so much frenzy dust that it darkens the sky around it. Then the purple feelers extend from his head, plus the purple highlights start to glow all across his body in the enraged state, which really adds to his intimidating presence. And this has nothing of the gigantic wing arms now beating your body to a pulp. Speaking of these wing arms, so few monsters have such a radical shift in the middle of their fight. Gore's Rage mode hugely augments its physical prowess. All of it combines into an exceptional battle with a truly monstrous foe. Glory to Gore Magala. the ultimate dark star of the show that is for Ultimate's outstanding story. No matter what, his presence is always there in some form. And when you're standing right in front of him, my god, it is epic. Overrated for some, but I personally can never get enough of this glorious, edgy bastard of corruption and disease. Magala is just so good. My first game in the series was for you, so of course he's gonna be special. He was my first big wall, he was one-shotting me, and I got so fed up that I just restarted the whole game. Turns out I was just a moron and only ever upgraded my weapon and not my armor. I don't know how I managed to do that one, but still, he's kind of a symbol of my growth for this series, so he's very special to me. And of course, at long last, have you been paying attention this entire time? Do you know who this is? Is this who you were betting on? Let's figure it out. Number 1. And wouldn't you know it, one of our guests managed to snag us placement number 1 for their monster to talk about. I present to you the streamer and VTuber Ark, discussing the winner of our poll, Primordial Malino.
Hello there and welcome to the most fantastic part of this video. Not only are we going to be talking about the best monster in the entire series, but I'm the one that's going to be presenting it. Me, the VTuber Knight, the one that talks about waifus and makes dumb jokes on YouTube. Yeah, that's your boy. Let's read some of your comments, started with Bray-502, peak design, peak fight, and beautifully wraps up Sunbreak's story. It can be hard to remember that the Hunters Guild is a conservation group with how many monsters you kill, but sparring Primordial Malino and even fighting alongside it to kill the Curio reminds me that the player and the hunters are righteous and fair groups. Totally agree with what you said about Primordial Malino, but I'm not too sure about the guild. I think they have a dark side that we may not know of. Got another really good comment here from Arctic Tron, and they say, I think my favorite part about Primordial Malino is that we finally have a story-related monster that didn't end up with us killing it. Story-wise anyway, which is true. Especially after we had a 180 from Ruiner Nurgigante going from it's the one that keeps Elder Dragons in check to anyways, death. You bringing up the story side of things is actually a really smart move, and I'm gonna comment on this a little bit more later on. Old Murdoch says, mechanically I think that Primordial Malino was one of the best fights in the series, my man! While I prefer regular Malzeno's aesthetic, Primordial is phenomenal. The way his story is woven into the fights is phenomenal, the fight is fantastic, and to this day, it gives me a challenge. 5 out of 5, which is a bit of a weird rating system. Why not just 10 out of 10, man? Just kidding, just pulling your leg, okay? You preferring the quote-unquote regular Malzeno aesthetic is fine, because Primordial and regular Malzeno have like very different aesthetics, and although I am a sucker for the Knight aesthetic, I'm going to talk about that later on, I can see your point. And you're 100% right, the fight is super challenging, and it's actually pretty unique compared to what we've seen before with other monsters, so good points, man. Drastic2624 says this guy is one of the best variants introduced, period. My boy. The way in which he is portrayed as a valiant knight compared to the regular Malzeno's vampire aesthetic is just awesome. His fight is amazing, arguably the best fight in Sunbreak, I agree, and it's got really cool story moments too. Also, that combo that he does at the last phase wrecked me quite a lot, at least until I realized that it follows a very specific pattern, and with that knowledge it makes it so fun to dodge/parry depending on the weapon. Can relate, that last phase kicked my ass quite a few times. We got one last comment from Eander, or Lander6443. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, mate. I'm terrible with names. I'm not going to read everything that they wrote, I'm just going to paraphrase it, and they basically go ahead to explain that Primordial Malino is the best monster that they have ever fought. They then go to describe how the first phase is incredibly complex and how the different phases differentiate from each other. They go ahead and explain how the first phase, feeling more like a duel between knights, feels very unique, and then they also break down the feeling that is Primordial Malino succumbing to the Curio and going berserk. They're also highlighting the importance of the story event, where if you hunt him for the first time and you see him towards the end where he gets the cutscene where the Curio are dead and it leaves, that's also awesome. I love that you brought it up. Seriously guys, really good points. Now, Volcanic has been kind enough to let me share my perspective with you guys, which is what I'm about to do right now. My favorite monsters before Primordial Malino consisted of Valstrax, Legiana, Odogaron, Elatrion. I'm just saying this to kind of highlight the standards of my favorite monsters because I'd like to think that they're quite high. To give you a better idea of what a good monster is to me, it has a mixture of a good design, the monster looks cool, the gear needs to look cool, so the weapons and the armor, and the fight needs to be fun, and also challenging. Primordial Malzeno has all of that, and on top of it, he has the extra point, which is his story is just cool. Monster Hunter isn't necessarily a story-driven game. Like, yes, there is a narrative, but it's mostly a background element, right? But establishing this kind of link between two dominant monsters and the hunter is great. We all thought Malzeno was this vampire monster that basically fought Geismagorm because they were trying to control the Curio and trying to defend their territory. But it turns out that what we thought was a regular Malzeno this whole time was actually a devolved variant under the influence of the Curio. The real Malzeno is much more like a guardian figure, which really strikes that nice balance that we have as hunters. Hunters don't just kill, that would be poaching and that's illegal and punishable by death. Hunters strive to protect the balance of the ecosystems that they work in, right? And so upon looking at how the fight itself, it goes from this clash where he uses his wings and tail as like spears and shields and swords, it feels like a very human-like combat. It just feels so unique. And seeing how the fight progresses, between him actually having the Curio latch onto him, so then it feels like more of a old Malzeno fight where he's using the Curio to attack us, leading all the way up to that last phase where he just lashes out and goes berserk because the Curio have taken over and he goes into arisen status. It's just so cool. His weapon and armor just look beautiful and they really stand out from the other Malzeno weapons. Also, in his design and his lore, kind of reminds me of Artorias from Dark Souls, which is like my favorite video game character of all time. But yeah, what else can I say that you guys haven't said already? He looks amazing, his fight's awesome, and his gear is awesome. Plus, he is a knight-themed elder dragon. I mean, I am obsessed with that aesthetic. It's literally what I base my channel on. But before I go, Volcanic, thank you so much for letting me come onto your channel and talk about my favorite monster. I really appreciate it, my dude. Now let's all hop on that copium train and start asking when Primordial Malzeno is gonna get back, because with enough harassment we can get there. And if for some reason you don't agree and you don't think that Primordial Malzeno is the greatest monster of all time, well then you can get fucked.
And I'm gonna cut in here myself, because I can't just do the #1 on my videos without me chiming in as well. The biggest reason why I find Primordial Malzeno to be my favorite monster ever is that he approaches the idea of an elder dragon in a very unique way. While most other elders distinguish themselves from the rest of the cast by having completely alien-esque abilities and effects on the things around them, Primordial relatively has none of these, similar to Nurgigante only having precision and immense amounts of strength. What makes me like him more than Nurgigante is how human Primordial is compared to him. Unlike just slamming things with as much blunt force as possible, Primordial has to actually think on how to enter and win a battle, with his sword and shield, wings and tail strategy. The power is still there, but it's precise and far more elegant than anything Nurgi can do. Very much like how us hunters have to target specific parts to get quicker kill times and knockdowns, etc. What I love, though, is that he's an intentional provider of balance wherever he lives. While Nurgigante balances the world's ecosystem mostly as a byproduct of it getting groceries, Primordial fully knows that he's protecting wherever he's fighting from another elder dragon. This can be proven by his previous symbiosis with humans and the relatively peaceful nature he had before Geismagorm showed up. Speaking of which, he fought Geismagorm and actually repelled him. The fact that he's willing to sacrifice himself to do so is amazing and not really something you see much in nature. The fight is exceptional, beginning as an extremely difficult duel between two level-headed warriors that quickly devolves into the dragon becoming more and more desperate as it's both dying and getting taken over by the Curio. Once you reach the bloodlust state, you finally understand just how this thing was able to repel a Geismagorm and protect the kingdom from other elder dragons. He is completely relentless, and you most likely have to play defensive and wait for his big openings. It's hard as hell throughout the entire fight, but satisfying to pull through. And in the end, you canonically free him from the Curio and help him kill all of those little parasites until the sun breaks. Then, the Guardian Knight of the Kingdom returns, and that symbiotic relationship with humans begins once again. Overall, just ending the story of Rise and Sunbreak on an extremely optimistic note. Probably the most perfect elder dragon and fight in Monster Hunter, like as amazing as Fatalis in Iceborne. There are still times that can feel a little unfair or a little janky, but Primordial is borderline flawless every time I fight him, and it never ceases to get my heart pumping when he goes into a phase change and the stakes start to ramp up. I think everyone would be upset if he never returned. What's there to say about Primordial Malzeno that hasn't been said before? He is a monster that has basically no flaws, an amazing gear tier both meta-wise and design-wise, and an incredible battle, awesome sound design, and amazing storytelling, awesome turf wars, and he is the greatest way Sunbreak possibly could have ended, and probably the best way a Monster Hunter game could have ended. Period. But what makes Primordial so special is that despite being an elder dragon, a living contradiction to nature, he is an animal filled with feeling and respect. That's something not even this franchise does often, nor gaming in general, and it's why I think overall, Primordial Malino is the single best Monster Hunter monster. Objectively, I still love Guanzurumu and Dure Mudira more. What a perfect monster to end Gen 5. This monster. This fucking monster. Not only is he the best variant in the series, but he's one of the best monsters in the entire series, period. He was the perfect capstone to Sunbreak, and no black dragon could have ended it better than him. He eclipses his base form in every way, design-wise, fight-wise, and gear-wise, and honestly, most other monsters from this game, too. He truly feels like the culmination of what Rise's combat set out to achieve, pitting you in a frantic, multi-phase battle that challenges you like nothing else can, all while perfectly concluding the game's storyline as he flies off into the sunset. My only very minor gripe with him is his lack of a unique theme. Something that the other super special variants have, like Chaotic and Raging, but the OG's theme still fits this guy's encounter very well. Otherwise, there isn't a single thing that could be improved about Primordial Malino, for he is perfection. Without a shadow of a doubt, he earns 5 stars. And this concludes our little fan poll project. Several months of work, and data collection, and insights from you, the fans, all your voting and commenting, and the passion that we as fans of this franchise share together. It has been an absolute blast to work on this. It has been a pleasure to gauge your opinions each and every day. It's been nice to see my notification box absolutely flooded with about 90 comments every time I look away from it for about 6 hours. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're satisfied. If you're not, you only have each other to blame. Don't get mad at each other. Thank you very much for tuning in. The second year of Merry Huntmas is going to be on its way. Keep your eyes peeled on the channel for December 1st of this year, as we will announce the category for this year's Advent Calendar of Monster Hunter. But as for right now, this has been CR-Volcanic, or Connor. I shall see you around. Goodbye, everybody. Shout out to all the patrons, and special shout out to Stromlin, Sir Wafty, Sir Newt Newt, Shaggy Grizzly, Peaberry, Nihilus Chimerax, Datboy Doinderding, Kets, I Think I Stole Your Sandwich, and Call Sign Shadow. Thank you very much, everyone.